King Duke IX of Calabar, also known as King Duke 1895-9, was a significant figure in the history of Calabar, a city in southeastern Nigeria that has long been a center of trade, culture, and political influence. As a ruler of Old Calabar, his reign was marked by the complex dynamics of colonialism, traditional governance, and socio-political changes that shaped the region during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Early life and background. King Duke IX was born into the influential Duke royal family of Calabar. The Duke family belonged to the Efik ethnic group, which played a prominent role in the political and economic history of Old Calabar. The Efik people were renowned as middlemen in the transatlantic slave trade and later in the palm oil trade, which became a crucial economic activity in the region after the abolition of the slave trade. Growing up in this royal family, King Duke IX was exposed to the complexities of governance, diplomacy, and commerce from an early age. His education would have likely included traditional Efik customs, language, and diplomacy, as well as exposure to the growing influence of European powers, particularly the British, who had established a protectorate over the Niger Delta region by the late 19th century. Ascension to the throne. King Duke IX ascended to the throne during a period of significant transition in the region. The British, who had established control over large parts of what is now Nigeria, were increasingly exerting influence over local rulers. The establishment of the Oil Rivers Protectorate in 1884 and its later merger into the Niger Coast Protectorate in 1893 meant that traditional rulers like King Duke IX had to navigate a delicate balance between maintaining their authority and dealing with British colonial officials. Despite these challenges, King Duke IX was a respected and influential leader in Old Calabar. His rule was characterized by a blend of traditional governance and accommodation of British interests, a balancing act that many African rulers faced during this era of colonial expansion. Leadership and influence. As the King of Old Calabar, King Duke IX wielded considerable influence over the Efik people and the region's economy. The Efik had long been key players in regional trade, and their strategic location along the Calabar River made them essential intermediaries between European traders and the interior of southeastern Nigeria. King Duke IX continued this legacy, overseeing trade in palm oil, which had become a primary export after the decline of the slave trade. Old Calabar was also a cultural hub, and King Duke IX's reign saw the preservation of Efik customs, language, and traditions. The Efik people had a sophisticated system of governance, with the king working alongside influential chiefs and elders in councils like the Ekp Society, a traditional secret society that played a significant role in legal and political matters. Relations with the British. Like many African rulers during the colonial period, King Duke IX had to navigate the increasing encroachment of British colonial power. The British administration often sought to undermine traditional systems of governance, replacing them with colonial structures. However, King Duke IX maintained his authority by cooperating with the British where necessary while striving to preserve the autonomy of his people. The British often relied on traditional rulers like King Duke IX to help maintain order and ensure the smooth running of colonial trade networks. In return, these rulers were sometimes granted titles or other forms of recognition by the colonial authorities. However, the relationship was often fraught with tension, as the interests of local rulers and the colonial administration did not always align. Later years and legacy. As the 20th century progressed, the influence of traditional rulers like King Duke IX began to wane as the British solidified their control over Nigeria. The colonial government increasingly sidelined local rulers in favor of direct rule through British officials. Despite this, King Duke IX remained a symbol of the rich cultural heritage and political history of the Efik people. King Duke IX's legacy is preserved not only in the history of Old Calabar but also in the broader context of Nigerian history. His reign represents a critical period in which African rulers had to contend with the forces of colonialism while striving to maintain their cultural identity and political influence. Conclusion. King Duke 1895-9 of Calabar was a pivotal figure during a transformative era in Nigerian history. His reign, though marked by the challenges of colonialism, exemplified the resilience and adaptability of African leaders who sought to navigate the complex relationships between tradition and modernity. Today, his legacy is remembered as part of the rich tapestry of the Efik people and the enduring history of Old Calabar.